You ready, Greg?
Let's go, Jay.
You're listening to The Success Paradigm with your hosts, Jay Atkins and Greg Gray.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Success Paradigm. We have a great show for you today. We have Mr. David Williams with us. So let me tell you who this guy is, and you're going to learn a lot more about him as we go through. So David Williams, husband, father, serial entrepreneur, and investor. So David started as an entrepreneur in 2009 after the company he worked for shut its doors. He then bootstrapped his first business on a shoestring budget, scaling it to over $20 million in recurring revenue. Since then, David has successfully launched and scaled numerous 7 and 8-figure businesses with well over $100 million in career sales. David also has a heart and passion for impacting others through his continuous philanthropic efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mr. David Williams.
How we doing? Thanks for having me on, guys. Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Greg. I'm honored to be here.
Good to see you, man.
Well, that was your official bio, Dave. I'm going to give the unofficial bio because I know you a little. I know you a little bit more intimately than all those great accomplishments that Greg read. So I met you, God, I don't know, probably 10 years ago, 11 years ago, and I was always impressed just with your presence and the conversations that we had and your creative mind. And then I actually came to your operation. I remember, I think it was probably 6, 7 years ago, and I was very impressed with your people, the way that you operated, your mentality, your mindset. And then I got to know you as a friend. And I know you'll probably talk about it on here, some of the things that you deal with and how you overcome that with your mind, which always amazes me when I hear and then how you do it. So that's one of the biggest reasons I wanted to have you on here, is because I think a lot of people think they have it rough and they psych themselves out. And I think, you and I come from familiar backgrounds, and we've had a rough upbringing. And like he said in your bio, shoestring budget, I know exactly what that means. Basically, that means no money whatsoever. And you had to make something happen. So you are exactly the person I love to talk to on here, because most people out there believe that success is not in their future and that it's not possible. So I'm looking really forward to getting to know you. And speaking of getting to know you, for our listeners, what we like to do on the Success Paradigm is talk about the story versus the glory. And I know one of the things about you, David, is there's really no such thing as glory, because you're always on to the next thing and what can I accomplish next and what can I do next. And that's what I love about you. Like, it's great, I'm here, but where I want to go next, which we'd like to hear about that today too. But what I like to hear is what made Dave, what shaped Dave, and why does Dave have the mindset and create the success in his life? And where did it all start for you?
Yeah, so I'll take you way back, I guess, to when I was a kid. So when I was a kid growing up, I was, I think, different from most kids, right? I was an introvert, and I had trouble learning. So all the way back to grade school, I can tell you that I had a lot of difficulty learning. When other kids would get A's, I had to put a lot of effort into being a C student. I had very different brain. My mind worked differently, I think, than other kids. They were always teaching a lesson, and I was off over here. And because of that, at a young age, a lot of my teachers wanted to hold me back. They wanted to medicate me. Is the first go-to. And luckily I had parents that were great advocates for me. It didn't allow that to happen, brought in the right resources. And I'd say, all growing up through school, it was just always a struggle for me. And I later found that it was really that what I had was a superpower. And I think that is too common in our school system today. We got kids that are in there, they're different, that learn different. And maybe they just don't know how to teach those kids differently. But because of that, I wasn't the most popular kid in school growing up. I was very introverted and had a lot of challenges, in school, just overall education. I had teachers telling me and concerned that I was, lower on the lower potential spectrum, that I needed to do something that was a trade with my hands if I wanted to be successful in life. And but again, I had great parents that got me resources and got some of the right people around me that got me through school, and I started to find a love for a game called baseball. And as a kid, because I didn't have too many friends, I just like dove all in on playing the game of baseball. And the one thing in the game of baseball, I loved it so much, but I wasn't blessed with a lot of God-given talent. I was actually the opposite of God-given talent. It was like God detracted talent when it came to baseball. But I loved the game so much that I wanted to be good. And it was always a big part of my life, baseball, growing up all the way through grade school. And as I was, trying to find love for the game in my environment, my dad, who's my hero, by the way, I think a lot of people can relate. He's the hardest working man that I know. And I watch that man, and if I get emotional, excuse me, when I talk about my dad, work around the clock. Because I had an older brother growing up too that went down the wrong path in life, and it happens to people. He's no longer with us today because of it. But he went down the wrong path, and it just broke my parents' hearts. And my dad being the man that he was, and my mom being the woman that she was, didn't ever want to see that life for me, and didn't ever want to see that life for my sister. So literally, my dad, he had two businesses. He started and worked around the clock to provide. We didn't have a lot of money at all growing up, but we had enough. And that was because of my parents. It was because of my mom, because of my dad. My dad started his own gutter business, basically putting seamless aluminum gutters on houses, and also a snow plowing business. And I remember overhearing conversations they didn't think that I heard when I was a kid, but they wanted to make sure that my sister and I were so busy that, we didn't have time to go down the path my brother did. But they didn't have the money to keep us busy. So my dad made the money. He would work. I remember he would get up 4 a.m. and do a snowplow route. And when that man went to work, like he worked for perfection. When he put in his snowplow contract, like 2 inches of snow, he would drive and plow 50, 60, 70 driveways. And if there was 2 inches of snow again on the ground when he was done, he would restart over again. When he got done with his job, he'd go to work on the gutter truck. And he would work day and night. So the man for years operated probably on like 4 or 5 hours sleep. So, that's why he's my hero. And I'd say, that's where that segues back into the baseball story, where I got my work ethic from. Because back then, I didn't have any God-given talent, but I loved the game. I saw how hard my dad worked. And I knew that was the equation that he followed to get to where he needed to be, and how he provided for us. And there was just something about that, being around that every day, day in and day out. Like, he didn't take days off. He didn't get sick. He was always there, always showed up. Never a day I remember that man not showing up. So that's what it did when it came to the game of baseball. Like, even though I wasn't good, I showed up every day. I put the work in. Like, when other kids were, playing, doing whatever, I was in the batting cages just practicing. And as I went into my high school years, still didn't have a lot of God-given talent, and, struggle making the teams. I would go in and literally go day and night and practice till my hands bled hitting the ball. And eventually ended up transferring out of my one high school to another one, got a fresh scenery, and that was a totally different start for me. Um, all of a sudden I went from the kid that wasn't popular to starting to get noticed. They gave me a boost in confidence. And I would say that combined with just showing up and putting the work in every day when other people weren't, I ended up batting 420 my high school year. Got invited to an
420?
Atlanta Braves tryout. And now I didn't make the first cut or anything, but they invited me off of my hitting ability because that was my favorite part of the sport. I just loved hitting the ball, and that's all I did. And that was always like practice. I would be in the cages hours upon hours upon hours, perfecting that craft with a mentor of mine. I was blessed with a mentor early on that my dad and my mother paid for. His name was Coach Tillinghast. And I remember coming into it was called the Battery, this baseball facility. They didn't just teach us baseball fundamentals, but they taught us fundamentals of life. So when I reflect back on my past, I was not only blessed to have a great father that did whatever it took, but I had some good mentors in my life. And we weren't allowed to come in and play baseball unless we could show a C report card. And they would teach us principles like hard work beats talent when talent doesn't want to work hard, sitting up front and taking good notes, prioritizing education over baseball. So in a sense, it was, I'd say one of my very first mentors in life outside of my parents. My grandfather, he was like a second dad to me. I was blessed with him and my grandmother growing up. But outside my parents and my grandparents, that was my first real mentor, and taught me a lot of things and reinforced my dad, what he did every day, hard work. So that's all I did. And I got labeled in the Battery as the hardest working student that they ever had in there. And even though I wasn't the best, and there were so many more kids that were better than me at the game, I took pride always being the hardest worker, always showing up. Every hit, even if I hit a foul ball, making sure I sprinted to the base. Like I just showed up and made sure I was a class act out on the field. Eventually that led to me going on to play college baseball. Before I got there, though, again, I was in college, and the hard work got me to a place that was better at baseball. But when it came to college level, I didn't have a lot of God-given talent. But I knew how to work hard. And in the off season, everybody's in school, everybody's drinking, everybody's going to parties. I was running in the gym. I was running up and down the bleachers. So when we started, they did a lot of running. I was probably one of the only ones that were conditioned to run. So in an environment that I was likely going to get cut for the college team, they allowed me to keep showing up because that's what I did. I showed up. I outran everybody else. I outperformed everybody else. I was the hardest worker in there. I was the first one to show up to practice. I was the last one to leave. And I remember in college, like they would run us so hard, we'd have to be in the gym at 5 a.m. Not many people could make it. During the tryouts, it was a tryouts over a series of months. They extended them because how fast people were falling off, because they would have us literally going all in at 5 a.m. running, and they would put a garbage can in the middle of the gym where most of the people on the team would get sick. And not many people could hack that with their extracurricular activities because they wanted to, go out, hang out, party, have social lives outside of that. I didn't really have any of that when I was in school. I just put my head down and showed up. And because of that, when it finally came to the time for cuts for the team, I made the team off of not talent, but grit and determination. And my first game that I did, that I played, I'll never forget, was we went on a scrimmage game, went down to Cocoa Beach, Florida. I hit 3 home runs. That was my best game ever in my college career.
That was your first game, Dave, you said?
That was my first game, and I can tell you not every one of them after that was that polished, but that was the one that, really kicked things off. And
you're a better man than me. Had I hit 3 home runs in the first game, I probably would have quit just so that would be just what they remembered me by. It's like, what happened to that kid? Oh, he just,
No, I was on cloud 9 for sure. And then most of the time throughout that, ended up hurting my arm. So I batted DH during college. And then from hurting my arm, ended up having to give up a game that was my whole life. I was determined that no matter what, regardless of the talent and the skills that I didn't have, I was going to keep working hard. I was going to eventually play pro baseball because I love the game so much. And eventually it got to a place where it was a tipping point. And as much as I didn't want to give it up, I knew there was just that time. I think when we go through moments in our life and there's transitions in our journey that we know it's just time to hang up the hat. And that's where it was. So I told my coach at the time, I was like, I love the game, but I know it's time to move on. I got to do something else. And it was very, very difficult at the time. I gave up the game for good for a while because it was just painful to go back to because it was the only thing I knew and what I loved so much, and put my heart and soul into it. Put so many, I can't tell you, thousands of hours hitting the ball in the cages and training. So then I went to MCC following my teacher's advice that said, hey, you're not going to be anything unless you do a trade. And I was doing tool and die because that's where they told me I needed to go, because they didn't think I had it up here because I could just never pay attention or retain information in school. Every time they were trying to teach, I was off over here. And I think that was just because I was just a creative kid. I was just thinking about other things. I was thinking about the next thing. And so I go do tool and die in school. Everybody's telling me you're going to make all this money. It's such a great thing. Get my certification and then go out to get a job after that certification in my trade. And then I find out they don't want to pay me what they told me I was going to get paid. They're like, well, you're going to start out making minimum wage and then you work your way up. And I'm always the type of person, hey, I'll work my way up into anything. But I didn't have a love and I didn't have a passion for it. And especially not having a love or a passion and starting out at minimum wage, that just wasn't, it just wasn't for me. It didn't settle for me. So when I was offered a job, I declined it. My parents told me at the time, they're like, you can live here as long as you want, as long as one of two things happen. You're in school, you go to work. And I was like, all right, well, I did school, I did baseball. Looks like I got to go to work. I don't know where I'm going to work though, because the tool and die thing didn't work out. What am I going to do? And just by luck one day, I went in and I like car stereos. I had I don't know if any of you guys or either of you guys ever had like a car stereo system in your car growing up.
Yeah.
I had like subwoofers. Like you'd hear me going down the street because some of my friends had that, and installed some of my own car stereo equipment. So one of the days I went to Circuit City, I was in the road shop, and I had a friend of mine there that sold me my car stereo equipment. And I always had Camaros growing up. I had all these like beat up Camaros that I was always fixing up in the driveway, putting car stereo systems in. He told me, oh, you're looking for a job by chance? Because they need people working here in all positions. I was like, oh, great. And he told me at the time, he's like, well, come in. You obviously put your own equipment in your car. They're looking for an installer in the car stereo bay to install car stereos. I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to be able to live with my parents much longer if I don't get a job. So this is going to be the temporary thing. I'm just going to, I guess, work at Circuit City for now. Went in, he got me an interview, and I went on this interview, and I kid you not, this is how it went down. I went in an interview, and I'm here, and they made me do this aptitude test. And I did that, and after the aptitude test, I sit in my interview, and my friend comes into the road shop installation bay, drives his car in the middle of my interview, and it was like one of these things, it's like a shop in the back, right? So they're doing it on a countertop at Circuit City in the back. It wasn't formal in an office. They're interviewing you there while clients are coming in and out with their cars. And here comes my friend randomly in. He's like, yeah, I got to get my car stereo fixed. He's like, okay. He's like, what happened? He points at me and he's like, yeah, he installed all my stuff. And they looked at it, and it was probably one of the worst car stereo installs that they ever saw. It was like all duct taped up, and I didn't use wire crimps, and it wasn't a very professional job.
This was during your interview?
This was literally no joke during my interview.
Okay.
And he goes, I'll tell you what.
Talent thing, it hadn't, that whole God-given talent thing hadn't kicked in with stereo.
Yeah, no, it definitely didn't again. Okay. And he's like, I'll tell you what, I'm definitely not giving you a job as an installer. He's like, but you passed the aptitude test with flying colors for sales, and I need a salesperson. You want to do it? And I knew nothing really about sales at the time. I did have like a business when I was younger where I had my own baseball card business, but that was about it at the age of 12. So I was like, all right, I need a job. So I got on the sales floor and I started talking to people, and I realized I was not too bad talking to people. And it was a commission-based job. So you got paid. And at the time, like back in the day, I was, 18 years old, coming out of college, and paid pretty good commission, especially if you sold well. So here I am selling people car stereos and start doing it. And I'm getting these like commission checks. I'm like, this isn't a bad deal. And I'm learning from my friend out on the floor. And before I knew it, the very same fundamental that I had with me my whole life that I witnessed with my dad, it just instinctively kicked in. Like I started hustling. Like I just started grinding on the sales floor and started practicing to get better. I'd go home and like practice my pitch in the mirror, how I would like take people from a $200 car stereo, they want to put an in-dash unit in there, into getting a Circuit City credit card, and then getting a $2,000 system in their car with subwoofers, like everything else, extended warranty. Eventually I got so good at what I did, I was the first person ever that they allowed me to cross the boundary of outside of my department, and they let me free in the whole store because I was actually driving a high portion of their extended warranty sales in small increments in the road shop. It was like $50 at a time on the radio. I was doing it, and I was like accounting for a good portion of their extended warranties. So like, we want this guy in the rest of the store selling big warranties. So like, why don't you go try a computer? So I started studying day and night about computers, learning about computers, and I started outselling all the computer people. And then before you know, he's like, why don't you start selling TVs? So while I had some friends there was a lot of people that didn't like me because here I am, like I'm going out there, and I just decided to put in the work. A lot of people were talking, chatting, doing whatever they do in a retail job. I was running laps around the store. Anytime I saw a customer come in, boom, I was there trying to sell them a TV with an extended warranty and Monster Power Surge Protector and like filling up his cart. I was in the computer department doing the same thing. And I actually went as far as like, and this goes back to, my teachers telling me I was low potential because like I just thought different. I was always like this creative kid. So I was always up in my own head, not paying attention to what they had to say or when they're reading. When I went out there, I just started getting creative and realized that was a strength of mine. So I was like, I keep selling all these things individually. What if I just like the price tags at Circuit City, I started making my own price tags. And I like took the $400 extended warranty, and I took the $200 surge protector, and I took like the service and like all that stuff, and I bundled it into the promo computer that was like $700 off. And instead of selling them the computer at $700 off and having it all there, I created a bundle package and replicated price tags and started putting them up in the departments and then selling it. And my sales were going through the roof, and they're like, what are you doing? I was the top person in like one of the top people in the company at that point in sales.
How old were you at this point, Dave?
Still like 18, maybe 19 at that point.
Okay. So I just wanted to take a note that for the people whose antennas up, that's where bundling probably first came into Dave Williams.
Yeah, that was my first bundle.
Bundling.
Yes,
made
like,
yes, absolutely.
So I started doing this, and then the manager's like, what's that guy on? Because they could hear me, like when I go to pitch an extended warranty, because I get loud for some reason when I do my sales pitch, they could hear me across the store. So when the DMs and stuff would come to visit, like, why is that guy screaming at a customer? Like, oh no, that's Dave Williams. He's our top extended warranty. That's how he does it. Just watch. And they sit back and watch. And like 30% of the ticket was an extended warranty. So I kept doing it. And then really early on, I ended up getting promoted. They came up to me and said, hey, not many people do what you're doing. We'd like to make you a manager. At first, I didn't want to because I was going to make less money because I was on commission. But then all of a sudden, commission's going away. I'm like, all right, I got to figure something out. That manager gig sounds pretty good now. They put me in the manager role really fast within 9 months. I came into the manager role, and I just did the same thing. I ground, I worked hard. I taught my people the things that I did. And I moved up really fast, and I became one of the youngest store managers in Circuit City history. I think I was 20 years old, and I was running, $20 million superstore at the time.
So I just want to interrupt you for just a second, because I know there's more to the story because I know you, but you have been dropping a bunch of nuggets in this first part of what you've been talking about that I can now see how a lot of this is connecting to where Dave Williams is now with the work ethic, the hustle, the creativity. So just as you're saying this, I just want the folks that are listening to the podcast, I know they think they're hearing kind of the biography of Dave Williams, but what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of component pieces that keep showing up over and over and over again. The hard work, the hustle, running to customers before anybody else gets to them. Just before we got on here, you said something was interesting. You felt like people are always chasing you. That's why you run so hard. So I just want to forgive me for interrupting you for a second, but I just want to make sure that people's antenna are up and hearing those pieces, because I know that's going to come into play when we talk a little bit more about your view of success a little bit later. So go ahead.
No, absolutely. And it actually makes me think again, going back to school again, because I felt like I had to try so much harder than the other kids to do what they would do. And learning was always a problem. That work ethic would get in, but what came with that too was anxiety, right? I was a very anxious kid. I had a lot of anxiety problems growing up. I had a lot of them going through baseball because things just didn't come effortlessly for me. I had to put a lot more, like to read a book. Somebody could sit there, read, and they would know it. I would literally have to read that same page 10 times to have it stick up here. So I get anxiety when an assignment came up or I had to speak in front of a class. But I think somewhere along the way, I learned that anxiety to become a superpower rather than a disabler.
Yeah.
And anytime that anxiety would creep up on me, I know how to curate it is hard work. I have to just do it 10 times, repetition. That was how my brain would work. And my brain would learn is through this repetitive pattern that I'd figured out in order to learn at a level that the other kids would. So when I came in, it was like the same thing in Circuit City. I don't know how to lead people. I don't know how to coach people. They just took the 19-year-old kid that was great at sales, that was showing some ambition, and they said, here's the keys to the kingdom. So anxiety kicked in massively for me. And I was like, how do I do this? I got to figure it out. So what did I have to do? I worked day and night. I got paid 8 hours a day, but I worked 14. I worked 16. I came in early in the morning. I started staying home at night, practicing different, how I was going to teach the things I knew, because I never knew how to teach somebody or coach somebody before. And here I am as a young kid, all this responsibility on this big store that I got to staff, train, do the planograms, the warehouse. I got all these people I'm accountable for, and I got to learn these things. So it was like working around the clock to learn them. But very quickly, that hard work ended up paying off too, and I became known as the fixer at Circuit City, where I'd come in and take a store that was underperforming, that didn't have staff, and I knew how to create a community. I knew how to create a team, and I would come in there and turn it around. I would come in there and lead people. I would come in there and coach people, and then teach them the talk paths that I did to emulate my success. And surround extended warranties and all these different initiatives. We were always top in the country. So we'd win award trips and they'd bounce me store to store, until eventually I got to this place. And, here I am in my own box, though, at the same time, thinking that this is life, right? I'm doing pretty good. I was making, just as a kid, 19 years old, 70 grand. That was pretty good back then. But I'm thinking this is life, and I'm going to go the corporate ladder. Like, what's next for me? I'm going to be a DM. I'm going to be that, because I was in this box and I didn't really know anything outside of my box. I knew how to work hard. I knew how to get results. Eventually, they put me on a corporate innovation team. Half the time I was running a $24 million superstore. The other half, I was flying down to home office, coming up with new business concepts, because that's they noticed that is a strength for me. One of the blessings in Circuit City, I picked up some more good mentors, and I had my DM was, I'd say, my next very memorable, from my baseball coach, memorable mentor in my life, that noticed my work ethic that most people didn't have and enjoyed working with me. So he took me under his wing and taught me how to lead people, taught me how to be, just really an effective leader out there and lead other leaders. Invested a lot of time in me and making me who I was and successful at my role. Saw me going above and beyond. So they had me on this corporate innovation team towards the end of my career at Circuit City. And then all of a sudden, I'm just working hard, just trying to drive results. And one day, I'm in just a lot of pain. My back's in a lot of pain. My neck's in a lot of pain. And I'm pushing through it because that's just like who I am. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but started having all these back issues. Then all of a sudden my neck would just get like so compressed I could barely move it. I'm like, what is going on? I'm going to chiropractors, and I just think it's just something from baseball. Then all of a sudden one day my ankle swelled up so big I couldn't walk.
Wow.
So I started going to doctors. They're like, well, there's something going on with your foot. And, they wanted to have a surgery on me, and they still couldn't figure out what was going on. And then all of a sudden my other ankle swelled up. And like, I really couldn't walk because now both of them were there, and they had me on crutches. And I'm in so much pain.
How old were you at this time, Dave? How old were you then?
When this first happened, it actually first happened when I first came down with this early on. I think when I was like 22.
Okay.
And I got into a place where I could just manage and get through, and then it resurfaced and came back again towards the end of my stint at Circuit City.
Okay.
But when it first happened, I didn't know what was going on, so I going doctor to doctor, and they did all this genetic testing. They were like, "Hey, you got a autoimmune condition. It's like a rheumatoid arthritis, but it affects the neck and spine. It's called ankylosing spondylitis." And any of you that don't know that, I think the singer in Imagine Dragons has it. And then there's actually a movie that they made with, what was it? Something I want to say was it Mick Jagger. I think like he had it, and that's what led him down his path to like drugs, because the pain was just so immense he could not get through his gigs unless he would get through it. So it's a really painful and debilitating disease. And, to the point where your body's just inflammation causes your muscles to lock up. You get tremendous nerve pain, messes with your clarity. So eventually they're like, yeah, you got this. We're going to give you meds. And started putting me on painkillers. And I was on painkillers. That wasn't working. So they put me on more painkillers. And they had me on muscle relaxers for this muscle tightness I'm dealing with. I'm doing that 4 times a day. I'm doing anti-inflammatories. And then eventually they started giving me these meds. I had to take injections every week that lowers your immune system because I had an overactive immune system. That's what that autoimmune condition is all about. And so they gave me, I'd have to take these injections that lower my immune system, but then can leave you susceptible to other things. Started ripping my stomach apart, could barely eat. Started getting really bad. And towards that end of my time at Circuit City, I ended up going off of work on disability. And I'm dealing with all these different things, and I'm not getting paid, and I'm trying to figure out my health. Time's ticking, and they could only hold my position for so long. I think 6 months was the maximum, and I got short-term disability the first couple months, and then after that, nothing. I'm depleting my savings and losing everything. Eventually, got to a little bit better place, but it's still like real rough condition. I wasn't ready to come back to work. And that's when, my doctor told me at the time is like, honestly, a good portion of people, what you have is so debilitating because the pain you deal with, it just progresses and progresses. The only thing we can do is keep giving you different cocktails of medication to slow it down. And he goes, you really got to look in long-term disability as your reality. Because to manage this disease, it's an expensive disease, and you're struggling. You can't be on your feet in retail anymore, and that's what drove you off of work, and that's the reality. So here's my doctor speaking this into my life. I got people at work telling me, Dave, if you don't come back, we have no choice. We can't hold your position. I asked them, I was like, can I get a little bit more time to go through some physical therapy, get a little bit better condition before I come back? And they said, no, the time is the time. And so I forced myself to get up. Luckily, I'll go a little bit deeper in the story than I normally do, but I had a good friend of mine. They paired me up with another store manager as I came back to work, and he understood what I was going through. So in the first few weeks, allowed me to, there's some days I couldn't be on my feet 8 hours a day. I was just toast. The pain was so much, it just tapped me out mentally. And I just kept pushing through, and eventually started getting a little bit of momentum. Got to the point where I could do another 8-hour day again. Still trying to build my way back financially while I'm dealing with this burden. And I'll tell you, I don't usually get in the depths of it, but even to this day, it gives me such severe pain A lot better than it was, but back then it was at its worst to the level I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I could barely get out of bed in the morning. But it was just, what was my choices? It was either being this guy that, stays on disability, lets his wife down and family and doesn't provide, and lives this below average life, or I got to push through. And I just pushed through. I did what my dad did no matter what. When things got tough, he showed up. So I came back to work and I showed up every day, pushed through the pain. All of a sudden, the store I was in, I took over, and it was actually an underperforming store at the time. And they thought that really they were going to end up just probably phasing me out, firing me. I couldn't handle it. But I pushed through it every single day, turned that store around to one of the best performing stores, started to get back momentum going again, leading the team. 90 to 120 days later, all of a sudden a customer walks in my store. And we knew some things were going on with Circuit City before, but they're like, oh, we're getting buyouts, we're getting capital infusions, things are going to be fine. All of a sudden the customer comes in and says, we're so sorry. We're like, well, what are you sorry about? Well, I saw on the news.
Oh, boy. So this is what I was going to ask you. So Circus, most people know the Circuit City story, but after all of that and you trying to extend and can you guys give me a little bit more time and mentoring, all of that led to a customer walking in and basically giving you the news that
because they didn't have it, they didn't announce it. They announced it to their shareholders first before they told management. And here comes this customer walking in. Like, what do you mean? They're like, oh, Circuit City is going to be liquidating. You're starting liquidation. I'm like, what? And I just turn on the TV. And
so I got to ask you a question. I got to ask you a question just about this part, because especially coming out of COVID, there are a lot of people that can probably relate to the "I thought it was going to be here and then it went away" thing. In fact, went away really quickly, especially when they poured their heart and soul into it. And this is kind of like a serenity prayer moment, right? You threw everything you had at it. You worked your butt off. You put in all these hours. And part of what your story, the reason I think it's going to resonate with people is because you can do all of that. But then if somebody else still has the keys to the front door, they can still lock the front door.
Yeah.
And you can't do anything about it. Absolutely. And I'm guessing that kind of turned you into the fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me guy, in terms of deciding to take your own fate in your own hands in terms of being an entrepreneur, because then you have the keys to the truck and you determine whether you walk through that door and other employees walk through that door or not. So if you can pivot a little bit into how that made you think of, I'm going to control my own fate and my own destiny as a result of that.
Yeah. So I think that's when I started really, getting brought up. My parents really instilled faith in us as well.
Okay.
Started to really align myself with my faith. So it shook me. Like, I'm like going through, I felt like I'm at war, like every day. Like I'm dealing with these health challenges, financial challenges. And now my career, everything I knew of 10 years, everything I built is gone. What do I do? And it just shook me up. And I honestly didn't know what I was going to do or what was next. And probably the first couple of weeks, I was just in shock. I was shook up, a little bit of depression, a little bit of just, my world was just crumbled, I felt like. And my wife always told me at the time, Dave, you always figure it out. And when I look back, I realized I always had faith and I always figured it out. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm like, this is my time. I'm going to do something else. And I was looking at, hey, I'm going to be manager at Best Buy. I'm going to do, these different companies. But I knew with my health, it was going to be challenging and I was going to run into the same thing. Just being in retail on my feet 10 hours a day wasn't in the cards. My dad was an entrepreneur. I always had an entrepreneur spirit. I was an entrepreneur when I was 12, when I had filed my first DBA and did a baseball card shop. And all of a sudden I came across a friend of the family that was in the insurance business. And good friend of mine, Greg Lewis and Rich Lewis. Rich Lewis had an insurance agency. And I'm like, well, what is that all about? And he's like, passive income. I'm like, oh, tell me about that. reoccurring revenue. And like, that seemed like a good gig. And I just said, I'm going to open an insurance agency. It was off the cuff.
Why not?
Like, are you crazy? You've never ran a business. All businesses fail. You don't know nothing about insurance, and you don't even have any money. So I'm like, I'll figure it out. Like, I always figure everything out. And then one thing at the time, I was broke. My credit was damaged because I had medical bills that stacked up. And then one day, like, this is where my faith kicked in, and I firmly believe to this day, God does these things on purpose to build us. God gave me my disability as a kid for a reason by design. He gave me the learning disability for a reason. He gave me the health challenge for a reason. He gave me all these things to build me into this different human. He got me to that point where I was ready, and he took away something from me that I thought was a big loss, but it was the start of the rest of my life.
Cool.
So here I am. I know I want to be an insurance agent. They liked me. They liked what I had to say, but I don't got no money, and some things popped up on my credit. They had to be resolved first. I didn't have the money to pay it off. One day, liquidators came in and said, Dave, all this open merchandise, display models, customer returns, we got to get rid of for pennies on the dollar. Just blow it out, whatever you can get for it. Something like just struck me in that moment. And my first response was, what if I made it easy on you and I just bought it all? That was my aha moment. That's how I'm going to get my money. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, if you just got to get rid of pennies on the dollar, instead of like, let's all just blowing it out and like customers come in, let me just buy this return merchandise. Let's come up with a number. I'll buy it from every store within 3-4 hours a year. And that's what I did. I liquidated my 401k. It wasn't much at the time. I think I ended up after penalties like $7,000 or something like that. Bought up about 60-70 grand worth of electronics. And I was buying everything, like old remotes, like TV remotes, just like random abandoned TV remotes, wires, cables, power adapters, TVs, anything that I could get. Got up, probably again, like 60,000-70,000 with electronics. Showed up one day with a few carloads, and my wife's like, what's going on, Dave? I'm like, well, I think I got an answer to a problem. So, I just explained to her the conversation. Start filling up the living room. She's like, she wasn't really happy at the time. She didn't know what that was going to take us, because our living room was no longer a living room. It was like piles of electronics.
It's a warehouse.
Yeah, and actually, I bought Circuit City shelving and gondolas. So I later created shelving just like I had in Circuit City, inventoried it, created hooks on the wall down in my basement, had all the TV remotes organized by brand, had all the speakers, the Bose systems, had a big shelving row on the wall where it was all categorized in the totes, and started cataloging it, and then started listing it on eBay.
So you bought it pennies on the dollar, and you sold it for a few more pennies than what you bought it for.
Here's a $50 camcorder I bought. I got $400 for it, and I blew through all the good items. Right. And I noticed that, like, wow, all this random miscellaneous junk that they lost. People are paying $100 for a TV remote when they lost like their old school projection TV, and you can't get that replaced anymore. They'll pay $100 for that. So I'm like calling more stores at the time when I like figured that out. Like, you got any more remotes? And I got more remotes and started selling it online. Long story short, raised enough money, paid off my debt, and just enough capital to start my first scratch agency.
And so, yeah, go ahead, Jay, because
So, listening to all this, one of the things you said is your dad was a great mentor. Then you had a great mentor at Circuit City, and I know one of the things that you do a lot of is investing in mentors. Not just free mentors. Like, you pay a lot of money to learn from other people. What do you think? Where did that come from that you started doing that? Because you still do it today. I mean, I see you all the time going to masterminds, and when I talk to you, you're saying, I'm in this mastermind, I'm in that mastermind. Like, so by accident, but tell me the importance of it too. Like, how did it happen, and why do you think it's important for people out there to, because I will tell you something really quick. So I've had 20 years of free golf lessons, and I've got a pretty crappy golf game. And because you get what you pay for. And I
Yeah.
hired a professional, an ex-PGA pro 3 months ago, and my game has evolved 40 years in 3 months because, I'm paying this individual to teach me. And obviously, we've gone to some of those same masterminds and been that group. But from your standpoint, like, was it because of your father and because of the Circuit City that you found it very important to have an outside perspective to look at you, to hold you accountable? And then, like, just talk about what you feel like the importance is and why you invest so much money in that.
Well, I think, when I look back in my life, every pivotal moment where I got to the next level, it was never like, it was always a who moment, right? It was always like somebody in my life. My dad was the who moment that instilled the work ethic in me from a young age and then continued on. There was my baseball coach that reinforced that and taught me some additional life fundamentals. Hard work beats talent. And that's why I never let anybody outwork me in a room I'm in. That was a who moment. Came across my DM at Circuit City that, had he not been there, I would have just like been floundering trying to figure this out. And he took me under his wing and taught me how to lead leaders and be a leader. And that was a who moment. And every one of these who moments led to transformation at like this astounding level and gave me shortcuts. Like if I would have continued to flounder around all on my own, just trying to figure it out, I probably maybe would have gotten there. But by having those who moments, they launched me like a rocket ship every time I came across the right person, I guess. And then when I really started to resonate with that, realized that I just got to continue as I outgrow the room I'm in, continue putting myself in rooms with other people that are smarter than me and try to self-generate those who moments to try to continue to propel my career.
So, but you invest in it, and that's the thing that Jay was talking about. I mean, we talked to a lot of really,
multiple. I mean, at this point in my career, multiple six figures.
yeah, right. And we often talk about, we ask people, well, who is your mentor? And everyone, I would say pretty much everyone we talk to has kind of that organic mentorship circle,
Yep.
A boss or somebody but you are very intentional about creating who moments now. I mean, it seems like it's part of your standard operating procedure is to create who moments as opposed to just happening upon them, because you've seen the meteoric rise that happens. And when you say shortcuts, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, as in you don't have to drive 30 miles out of the way to go someplace that actually is only 2 miles away, because folks can give you that thing. So, but I know Jay has talked about this before. A lot of people kind of balk at that. They're like, well, why would I give this guy my money? That's I can figure it out. And you actually you said, oh, I can figure it out. And we all probably could figure it out on our own. But
I had a lot of people telling me that too when I was invested. Well, that's a waste of money. Why are you doing that? You can go on YouTube, yada, yada, yada. But I realized most of the people that were giving that advice, the reason why they looked at it as a waste of money, because they knew they weren't going to put the work in.
Right. Oh,
but if I was going to put the money in, I know that like I'm just going to show up, I'm going to put the work, and I'm going to make my money count. It's kind of like going, hey, I'm going to be an attorney, I'm going to go to college, but I'm not going to show up to class. Well, of course you're not going to give your money to the college, and it's going to be a waste of money investing in becoming an attorney if you don't show up for class and then you never pass the bar. And I think those people deep down know who they are and maybe not willing to pay the price. But when I see an opportunity like that, and it's the right opportunity and I can get in the right room, and I know I'm going to be willing to put the work in on it, I know my value is going to be there because I'm going to make sure the value is there, not the person on the other end.
You're responsible
for the content,
the
connections. Like I'm going to make sure I get my.
You're going to take care of getting your own ROI out of it.
Absolutely.
Jay, we've talked about that so many times because there's always this things like, well, do we just tell people stuff and not worry about it, just kind of share what you know? And Jay has always said, here's the thing, you can tell people everything, and 99% of the people will hear it. You can just deliver it on a silver platter and they won't ever execute around it. But when you invest in it, you almost kind of, there's an obligation, that something that pulls you a little bit more that says, you know what, I spent my damn money on this.
Yeah.
I need to try to.
Your money is your accountability partner.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
So what is Dave, would you say the single most best advice you've received so far that you feel like has really, out of everyone, like choose one thing that you think you've learned from one of these mentors that you think is instrumental in your success path that you can share with the listeners?
Yeah, I'd say it's tough to give it to one, but I think if I got to bring it down to like two of them,
One that you live every single day.
I mean, it's putting in the work, and hard work beats talent when talent doesn't want to work hard. If I just keep putting in the work, putting in the work, putting in the work, putting in the work, nobody's going to outwork me. And eventually that compounds, right? A good mentor of mine told me, farmers, some of the best farmers out there, what they have to do, they got to walk out there and they got to put in the work day after day, and they got to walk in faith. They have to go out there and plow the land first. They got to plant their seed. They have to nurture, water every single day. And they could be doing that for months, putting in hard work for months and months before they even see a shoot come up from out of the ground.
Yeah,
And I
most
think
people
that's
today,
like that in life
yeah.
and in business. But the ones that do it day in and day out, that don't skip a day of watering, that don't skip a day of plowing, that do the best job doing that every day, that compounded leads to this massive harvest. But the guy that decides to sleep in, the girl that decides to sleep in, not water their land a couple of days because they're not seeing that. And I think everybody's looking for instant gratification in this world. I want my business to blow up day one. I want to go to the gym, and after like 3 days, I want to look like Arnold. Like, it doesn't work that way. You got to put in the work day after day, and it's got to compound. And sometimes it takes months and years of compounding. And then the big harvest comes. And I'd say that's the biggest thing for me, working every single day and showing up every single day, knowing that success is going to compound. And while it's not going to pay off today, there's going to be a day that I'm going to reap my harvest.
Yeah, that's real stuff. Well, so this is the question. By the way, it was not lost on me that you said that you batted 420 at one point in time. I got a little hung up. I actually literally lost the next 3 minutes of the story that you're telling because you mentioned the 420 thing. And my baseball history is somebody pitched inside Dave, and I think he dropped the bat at the plate and told the coach, "I'm going to go be in the band or something." So you have multiple businesses that you have created out of all of this experience, and even when you put in the work and you till the ground and you plant and you water day in, day out, and you have this great harvest, I think there are people that believe, and I have been one of those people at different points in time in my life, quite frankly, just to be totally transparent, believe that you kind of get to the promised land and then it's all, you don't have to worry about anything else.
No, doesn't work that way.
Right. because the bigger the harvest, very often the bigger the challenge.
You got to keep plowing. You got to keep.
Absolutely. You can't plant a tree.
You got a bigger harvest to lose at that point.
That's right. So there's more to risk. There's more risk.
Now there's a lot of people that count on you for that harvest. So it's more important. There's more.
So that's where I was getting ready to go, because now it's not just Dave trying to figure out how to figure things out. You're figuring these things out, and now you have employees in all these different places, and you have connections, relationships that are connected to these businesses. And you mentioned a few times when you were talking about every time you got to a new place, there was this anxiety that kind of crept in. Yeah. And I think anybody that has progressed has understood that. You ask for, even pray for these great things, and you get it, and you're like, holy crap. I didn't mean right now. I don't want it right now. I wasn't ready for it right now.
Sure.
What do you do? Not any specific instance in terms of businesses, but that moment where you kind of are the human Dave Williams, just like everybody else, kind of stops for a second and goes, I'm a little overwhelmed here. I feel I'm stressing out a little bit. What do you do to kind of right the ship when you get in moments like that?
Well, I worked through it, learn fast. But I got to have like a profound purpose and why. And that goes back to when I first started my first insurance agency. I wrote myself out a check for $1 million. As a matter of fact, I actually wrote that check out 2 years before that. And I don't know why, but I wrote it out and I had it in a drawer. And I just knew that it wasn't about the money, but that was going to create a different life for me. And when I went to start my insurance agency, I had that check that I found, and I still have it to this day. And I framed it and I hung it on the wall where I could see it every single day, every single morning. And I put my unemployment card in there. So the check was where I was trying to go. And the unemployment card was in there to stay humble and never forget where I came from. And I looked at that every single day. And what that check meant for me was the doctor never telling me again, Dave, you're going to be on long-term disability and you can do that I could create another life to find doctors, which I've done, that have got me off all my medications, by the way. And I still deal with issues, but
Awesome.
it afforded me that path. I wanted to give my wife, my amazing wife that always supported me, a way better life than what other people were telling me was destined for me and destined for us. And I guess I wanted to be my hero's hero. I told you earlier in the call, my dad was my hero.
Mm-hmm.
But, sorry, I always get emotional talking about my dad. Watching him sacrifice everything and work on no sleep, never put clothes on his back, new clothes. Same with my mom. They're the most selfless people I ever had. When they don't had anybody to take care of my grandparents, they brought them into our house, literally 15 years caring for them while she slept on the couch, doing nothing for herself, no vacations, no retirement, destined to live on poverty wages. My dad was always my hero, I wanted to be his. So a big part of that was if I could cash that check, I could rewrite the story. I could provide not just a life for me, but for my wife, for my family. And I could do in their retirement years the things for them they weren't able to do because of the things they were willing to do to make sure myself and my sister never went down that path my brother did. So I looked at that check every day, and it was always about that. And that was always my profound purpose. And my goal was to cash it by the age of 35. I think I was 34 and a half when I cashed it. We ended up, long story short, going from scratch, acting like somebody was trying to take it away from me 24 hours a day. Even when I started out on little capital in my insurance agency, if I didn't sell revenue quick, the trainers came in and said, Dave, we got to train. I'm like, no, we don't. Like, I'm going to go sell, and then you got to teach me what I'm doing. So I look like I know what I'm talking about as I'm doing it. In our very first month, because of that urgency and acting like somebody was trying to take it away from me, because I knew I could not fail the mission of cashing that check because so many people were counting on me.
Yeah.
Like day in and night. If I wasn't pulling somebody out of the shopping mall randomly, I was just pounding, like, not marketing, like I was on a corded phone in the beginning, hitting the white pages.
Right.
But because of that compounded success, we were one of the top in the region our first month. We ended up scaling that to a $20 million reoccurring revenue insurance agency. And along the way, I'll always be grateful for the Allstate opportunity because I took my parents on almost every trip, some of the most amazing experiences they had in their life. I got to walk up, give my dad the keys to a brand new Cadillac. With a bow on it. And I really got to be my hero's hero just recently. I bought my mom and dad that I paid for brand new retirement home in Sarasota, Florida. It was like the home of their dreams that they're going to be moving into.
That's awesome.
But that why was always there, and it's always doing the next thing. And I think it's a combination of the why being there, but also I never forget the day I was at Circuit City, and I still have sleepless nights to this day in fear. And that's maybe a flaw in me. It could be a superpower. I don't know what you want to call it. Then I'm going to go back to zero. And that's why I feel like somebody's always chasing me.
Yeah,
because I knew how unexpected and how quickly that happened. And I knew how freaking painful it was to deal with the health challenges, to deal with the challenges of being broke, to deal with so many adversities, that I'm so afraid to ever go back to that place again that I just keep running. I keep building businesses, and that led to building our recruiting firm. That led to building the CRM company. That led to now doing real estate flips. We're closing on our 8th Airbnb. But I don't feel like it's enough. I feel like I got to keep running to make sure I can keep impacting people, keep providing, and keep chasing that day.
Chasing
that. I think it's a superhero power, quite honestly. I mean, I think, I definitely have that same fear, especially when you're doing new ventures and, when you've had other ventures work out, but then the conversation you have with yourself is, just like your wife told you, you'll figure it out, and I think that's what successful people do, is they do whatever they can to figure it out. And, your dad definitely left a legacy with you, Dave. I mean, I could tell how emotional you are when you speak about him, and now you have a son, and
Yep.
I know how important he is to you. And let's just, let's fast forward, 50, 60 years from now. What would you want to leave your son with? Like 3 attributes that you would say, like, if you live into these 3 things every single day, you're going to live a successful life. And what would you want to leave with him, for him to leave with the world, as far as in what your legacy is? Because obviously your dad's hard work, his work ethic, his selflessness, all the things that you spoke of your dad. But, as time evolves, we get more specific with, hey, these are 3 things that I want you to live your life by. And then anybody you come in contact, I would like you to share and, live my legacy of things that I think people will be successful. What would those 3 things be?
I'd say just hard work, incredible persistence, and just like have a good heart of philanthropy to impact as many others as possible, because that's also grown as a big part of my mission in everything I do, that I try to integrate in my businesses. And that's, I'd say, another part of my why that's given me so much fulfillment, not just providing for my family, but, I'll tell you, like, every one of my people in my organization, even starting on the insurance side, we didn't just coach them on numbers and say you had to hit numbers. It was like, I found out, what do you want? Where do you want to be in life? Well, I want a house. I want a college education for my kid. I want a new car. I'll tell you, so many people that ended up buying my insurance agencies later on, they started out as like telemarketers for me. Like, one of them was a janitor that had no dad, didn't know where he was going to go in life. Another one of them was a young girl that she was working at a burger joint, and it was her first real gig. I told them, I'm like, I want to help you get to your goals and dreams. And they're the people that said, I want to be in your seat. And I saw at that moment that, sometimes, not everybody grows up and says, I want to be an insurance agent. Right? It's like, it's not the thing you think of. You got kids saying astronaut, firefighter, like all these different things.
Definitely not an insurance agent.
Yes,
but I realized,
single kid, nobody at a career day.
Yeah. I realized that I loved impacting people and changing lives, and it was a great vehicle to do so and help other people.
So you said hard work, give, and what was this? Oh, the third one?
I'd say that hard work, persistence, and then just having a good heart, philanthropy, like impacting other people. There wasn't any more enjoyable moments when, I was coaching my people and they maybe had a bad day or whatever it might be. It was never about the number. It was about, is what's on that vision board, was that a true commitment? Like, did you really mean it when you said you wanted a new house, college education, and you wanted to be in my seat? Well, of course I did. Well, it's my job as a leader to hold you accountable and have these tough conversations and make sure that happens. And one day of not showing up can cost you everything. So when we're here in this room, we got to show up every single day and be able to instill that into other people and see that, another person I look up to as a mentor is Mother Teresa. She's one person, and believe that one person can change the world through a ripple effect. And I think we can do that. A lot of times we think, well, I'm not going to impact people or work on philanthropy till I have a lot of money one day. And that day never comes. We keep chasing it. But what if we just made money matter, and we did it through our businesses and do it through what we did, and took the vehicle that we're in now and just said, hey, how do we impact as many people, get them all where they want to go? Like, I was blessed to dozens and dozens of young kids that I was able to change their life and then in the insurance world. And now we're doing the same thing in other companies and our recruiting company and our team that we have now. And that's actually led to me to a more of a philanthropic mission that we're working on now. Who knows if it's going to take off or not, but it's a passion project we're working on. Just basically ties into my whole story today, where we're trying to come up with a mastermind for kids that I've been working with Tim Story on, where when I reflected back on my life, like all these moments, I very well could have slipped up on one thing and gone down the same path as my brother.
Well, it's always about decisions. Yeah, it's always about decisions. I mean, we have, and one, it only takes one take the wrong turn or the right turn to make the difference. But it's kind of helpful if you have somebody at the intersection that kind of whispers into the driver's side window and says, "Hey, Dave, do not go left at this next corner."
Yeah, absolutely. And then to your point, I realized that a lot of the mentors I found by accident, a lot of the success I found by accident just through hard work, like our kids are in school for 12 years. Like, that's a long time to make some pretty capable human beings. And I think our school system's letting down our children. And I think when you look at the place where we're at in America, still the greatest country on earth, we could be so much greater. But I believe one of the main reasons we're not as great as we could be as a society is just education. Imagine our shortfalls in our learning if you compressed a lot of that in 12 years before the kids hit life. You gave kids mentors. You gave kids some of these tools to go out in life to give them a leg up. I can't see how that couldn't start impacting homeless. I can't see how that couldn't start impacting crime. I can't see how that couldn't start changing lives, making more capable human beings that have good hearts, that are philanthropic, that want to go out and create society. And if we can take our next generation and we can create an army, not an easy task, that wants to go out and do good, like we can change our country. And I think as American citizens, we all have a mandate, right? And we talk about mandates a lot over the past 2 years, but I think we all have an American mandate. And that could be whatever we decide it to be. That could just be showing up. So in the presence of other people, we encourage those around us to be better. We treat others better, whatever that may be. The thing for me, like I want to do this educational mastermind where some of these big name speakers that get kids excited can come in and maybe speak on some of the principles I don't feel they talked enough on in school. Faith, family, freedom, finances, fitness, core fundamentals that if we really armed our kids to the brim before they go out and graduate, we can help prevent, maybe even if one kid's not a statistic, I've done my mission. And that's kind of our next project that we're working on. I'm just, praying God, he gives me all the answers and makes it work out.
Well, you'll figure it out, like Lauren has told you a few times. You'll figure it out. So I know Jay is getting ready to do the takeaways because he has been taking, he takes lots of notes, by the way, just as a warning. He's going to say at least once, I'm not sure exactly what I wrote here because it's like writing prescriptions, but just before, Jay, you start that, one of the things that just to take away from what Dave was just saying is, people often see philanthropy as money, but it's actually time, talent, and treasure. So you can give any of those things. So if you don't have money, you can still give time. If you don't have, money, you can still share your talent and you can share your treasure too. So everyone, as this army, I think those are the weapons that army can always lean on. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. Jay, forgive me. I know you're ready for the Dave Williams takeaways.
Well, I just have a couple quick questions, just rapid fire, cool. Dave.
Yeah.
What your 3 favorite books?
I'd say my 3 favorite books. One of them was I'd say the 10X Rule. Obviously with Mr. Grant Cardone. Another one was Miracle Mentality with Tim Story. And then another one on top of my head was The One Thing.
The One Thing. That was a really good book.
Yes, I
really like The One Thing. And then
that was one, the 10X Rule, I think, was one of my first books that taught me to really start thinking bigger. That I remember that being monumental for me. Tim Story's been a big impact in my life, and That was another one. And then, the one thing really resonated with me in the sense that, sometimes we get caught up in all these other things. And sometimes the simple answer is what is in front of us. Instead of taking it a shotgun approach in life, figure out that one thing that's going to make the biggest impact, the 80-20 rule, laser focus into. And sometimes you can get all that done and more focusing on one thing rather than 20.
All right, so this is the ingredients of Dave Williams' success. Something that we heard over and over and over again, and I think people forget about it, especially today, because we are we want instant gratification, and I think social media, television, media, a lot of that's caused this instant gratification is work ethic, always showing up. They put the work in, and then get good mentors, which I know is something that you live, eat, breathe, sleep, think about all the time. You're always looking for good people that are going to help you. And I love what you said with the shortcuts. I think mentors help you with shortcuts, not to reinvent the wheel. And I think that's the biggest reason to have a mentor, is because if I can get somebody that's taken 30 years to learn what they've learned and I can learn it in 90 days, a year, that definitely makes me a lot smarter.
Absolutely.
That's why I love to read. An author has taken 30 years to write a book and put the content in, and you can learn
And then,
in a week or 2 weeks what he learned in 30 years.
and just imagine if we did that to our kids in school.
Yep,
You know?
exactly. Sit up front and take good notes. Every time I go to an event, I'm always up front, because that's also accountability. You can't really sit up there on your phone and look like a fool. So I always have an accountability with myself to sit up front. Hard work beats talent. You said grit. I have an acronym for grit. I love the word grit. I think grit is greatness revealed in time.
Yep.
Everyone wants things right now, but greatness is revealed with investment of time. Have determination. Turn your deficiencies into superpowers. I think all of us have those deficiencies, and one of the things, with your health and all the things that happened in your life, one of the things that you've done is just overcome those. And I think a lot of people use those things in their life as excuses. And as you said, God gave these things to you to test you and make you better, and show other people that don't have these things, what's your excuse.
Well, I think prayers are answered in powerful ways. And what a lot of people need to realize sometimes is when they're praying and they think God's not coming, like when they're, given something that might seem like a life setback. I think, sometimes what that is the answer to the prayer that's preparing them for the biggest comeback of their life. If they can just see it through that lens and lean into that gift and allow it to be the gift that it is, that setback can change their life.
Absolutely. And then I paraphrase this in something that you said, but you said that you were getting paid to work 8 hours a day, and you worked 14. So working 2 times as hard than you're paid is how you're going to get to making 2 times the money that you want to make. And then, so getting to the next level is always a who moment. I love that, because I think a lot of people, when they get to the next level, they make it a me moment.
Yeah.
And instead of looking within and saying, who helped me get here? I think is also a great lesson that you can pay it forward. So when you learn from other people. So I love that who moment, Dave. Mentors give you shortcuts. If you see, this is a Greg moment. If you invest in training, you will put the work in, which I think is really good, because I mean, a lot of times, you said it really well. Like, you can go online and get a lot of free content.
Yep.
But again, when you invest, the content that you consume will hit better, and you'll get a return on investment on that. And then, be in the room of people that are smarter than you. I feel like people like to be the smartest person in the room. So it's good advice to remember, always be in a room of people that are smarter than you. Again, I'm going to say hard work, because you said it over and over and over and over again. I think people forget what that means, what hard work is. And then you said to learn fast and work through it. That's a skill that you didn't have when you were young, and you didn't learn because you were thinking about other things. But if you can try to learn fast and then just work through it and trust the process, success will be there. The legacy that you want to leave is hard work, persistency, and to give. And I love the give, because I think more people don't give. But I think, there's two sides to give, Dave. The other side is I think you got to give to yourself and
Yeah.
pour into yourself by, taking care of you every single day so you can be the best version of you for the people in your life. Um, one day not showing up could ruin your life.
Mm.
It's pretty deep if you think about it. Like today, I'm just not going to show up, but that not showing up could actually be the difference between you having an exceptional life or having a life that is just mediocre. Um, Best books: 10X Rule, Miracle Mentality, and The One Thing. Um, and then a takeaway that I got from Greg, don't usually get many from him, but it, just
It's
kidding.
the shot normally happens much earlier in the show, Dave. I was
Well,
going to send you like a cash app for getting me all the way through this with no shot, and here we are.
and I wish more people talked about this, Greg, and the three T's of giving, time, talent, and treasure. A lot of people feel like it has to be money, or a lot of people and one of the things you're talking about doing with Tim's story is bringing in talent to talk to these students that can get through to students, and that's not treasure, that's time and talent, because these guys are great communicators that you're going to bring in that can impact lives. And I really like the time, talent, and treasure to think about how to give, because I think everyone thinks of giving is just treasure. I'm going to give money, or I'm going to go donate some time.
And I think a lot of it too is like, I want to spend a minute on this because I think people just don't realize like anybody can do it. Like even if you don't got your own business, that's great. Well, what are you doing? You're doing a training with your team on leadership. Invite some kids to the Boys and Girls Club to that. I guarantee the organization that you work for is going to be open to that. And in the same stroke of an activity you're already doing in your business, you could touch one of those kids' lives and make it integrated. You're a business owner, so many ways you can do it, and there's ways you can make money matter. Tom's Shoes is a great example of this too. They were a really good shoe brand, and one day they decided to make money matter, and they decided to raise the price of all their shoes by $5. And their thing is anytime you buy a pair of shoes from us, you will get a pair of shoes extra given to a kid in need somewhere in the world that can't afford a pair. So that actually exploded their brand. Tom's Shoes made more money than ever. They just raised their price by $5. They made money matter, did the same exact activity that they're doing everything, but because they came an impact brand, they now could have stayed at the mentality, well, we'll impact later. They made it a part of their mission and what they do, and used it as a conduit to explode their brand while impacting millions of lives. And imagine if every business in America did that.
That's fantastic.
That's awesome. Well, Dave, I really, really appreciate your time, man. Thanks for jumping on here and sharing your story with us, and sharing all these great nuggets and takeaways of all the battles that you have fought to be where you are right now. I really, really appreciate your time. And I know, right now you got a lot going on, and you got family, and again, man, just to appreciate you as a friend, and appreciate you as a mentor, and appreciate you as a guest. So thank you so much, Dave.
Same here. Likewise. Appreciate the both of you very much, and honored to be here today.
Fantastic.